Should we separate the art from the artist? And the dangers of doing so and not. Next up on Just Talk. So let's talk about it. And welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks. And I am your host, Snow718. And we're going to get right into this one. By the time you actually get this notification, I would have recorded this already on the 1st of May. I was listening to a YouTube stream discussing the obvious. Everyone wants to talk about Ezra Miller, and you can't talk about Ezra Miller and what HBO should or should not do without talking about Amber Heard and what the WB did and did not do. And listening to this conversation going back and forth, and I'm want to be remiss and not, I don't know if I'll drop a link on to you guys on the stream I got from, because I don't want this conversation to be focused about an attack or a preconceived notion that this is an attack on any YouTuber specifically, because my channel isn't really about being hot and spicy. We don't sell wings here. We talk movies and movie news and the business of, but this is where the lines get blurred between reality and the real life of the artist and the art. And should we separate the two? And one person jumped in talking about Ezra Miller that I think went right over everyone's head. I'm actually considering telling them that I actually appreciated they brought that to the table. What they said was that I guess some new information came out. I didn't look it up myself, but this was what was discussed. It's not about even so much should I look behind it to be sure. This is more about the point of. They said that there was other information that came out where other people were talking out about Ezra. Now, the one person called up and said, we don't know what is the truth or not, because I called up. They said the father was looking for other people that might have had this experience, and people were saying, well, that's kind of weird. I think she might have been the one to say she thought it was weird that he would do that. And a lot of people was arguing, well, why wouldn't he? Which is, to be fair, because you want to know is if he's done this with my child, could he have done it with others? Keeping in mind that we're not even addressing the fact that how an adult, even though 19, had access to a 14 or 12-year-old child to begin with, without being chaperoned by you. Now, people are doing their gumshoe sleuth thing where they're trying to figure out, oh, well, if they were looking for her at this point, how come they took a picture all together? And I'm assuming with Ezra, because if I'm not mistaken, that's what they were arguing, which was the point in which, when were you looking for her if there's pictures with you all together, happy together? And there lies an issue. But what this specific YouTuber wanted to expound upon was that if he's looking for like I guess other news outlets was looking for other people to reach out to them to tell their stories, and basically what she was saying was that anybody could call and come up with a story, anybody. And that's something that people need to talk about. And it seemed like the argument kept getting slanted to this overarching idea of, well, when women, this happens to women, women tend to not do this and tend to not do that. These vague, abstract concepts of what we generalize women do, attributed to something that's hyper subjective that we actually have information on. And the thing is, now you're assuming based on outside stories that isn't even confirmed by the woman in question. It's only stories that others are saying about Ezra Miller. These are still accusations. And the fact that the anyone could call and come up and tell a story shows there's no proper vetting in this. So anybody could compound on top of the story. And let's be clear, Ezra Miller hasn't made a formal statement, deleted all his social media, so people say it's weird. But is it weird? Especially if you didn't do anything. Even in a world where you didn't do anything, it would behoove you not to say anything. Because at this point, anybody could say anything, and you could find yourself in a defamation case, etc., etc. And people will argue, well, if you're innocent, you would just do it. No, this is no longer about whether you're innocent, you would speak up. People will use your words against you. I mean, this is what's happening. This has happened. People have said that Cosby, for instance, admitted to something that no one's read the deposition about. Let's be fair. People don't even know. They approached him to, just before they reversed the conviction, they approached him to say to come out early if he would admit it to time served. So if he was to confess, then it would be time served. But people are, and the news outlet was telling you, and even this weird judge that released the defamation. Not the defamation. I forgot what you call it, but his deposition, and took out and released the lines out of context, and people assumed that was a confession, when even if you took the lines, it really wasn't. It was just it wasn't a confession, because they wouldn't come to him for a confession after the fact, so that he could admit it, call it time served, be labeled a sexual criminal, and then it would stand. And then when they found out he was illegally locked up, it wouldn't matter. He's already admitted to it. That's not the story that the news told you. And that's the point. People just go with the narrative, so you never get a real ironed out idea of what had happened. It's not even about taking sides no more. And I know somebody's going to try to say, oh, so you're saying you're okay. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just talking about take emotions out of it. Taking emotions out of it. If a guy doesn't even defend himself, but he has accusations based on the fact that it's true, and no one has a number for how many times it's true. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's true a lot of times. We're not going to say usually. It's true a lot of times. That means this time it has to be so. So we shall not only label him specifically, then the company should start making actions towards him. But no one's also paying attention to the other side of that, because the argument has been since the bad woman actor and the superwoman actor, a Supergirl actress, they both actresses both came out and made a hint at them doing something together. Everyone's saying, well, it's Ezra Miller's fault, so we should get rid of him because he's putting a shade over these two women's work. And I kind of feel like this is a little, and I want to get in my personal feelings out of it, but as soon as I heard it, it was like, why? Because it's women. You know what I'm saying? That's what it almost felt like you're just selling this up so that you let people know, I'm on your side. One of those weird prefaces we have to say first before we have any kind of critical thinking, even against the women, because we want to make sure that we're aligning ourselves with the right person. People will say, well, you're over analyzing her, and it's like, why can't I not? The moment you say that they can say whatever they want without scrutiny, then you open up the doors for anyone to say anything without scrutiny. And you don't want that to happen. That's extremely dangerous. Here goes the kicker. This is coming from a Snyder fandom that thought that it was out and out not fair to just take Zack Snyder off the film. But you didn't understand this. Like, Zack Snyder was already tweaking his ideas because people already labeled him as all types of things just to get him off the film. From saying that he didn't really like Superman, bringing up a lot of videos out of context, trying to make him look like he's a villain of the DCEU so that they won't move forward with him in the franchise. This coupled with a lot of things around it that made it advantageous for people to just ready to move him from the film. And as anyone said the other day in that specific stream, well, if he's a detriment to the franchise, he should be removed, or we should just augment the film outside of the storyline to go against any preconceived notion of what could be fallout from how people feel about a guy that we have no confirmation on that he did or did not do. And that's the worst part. There is no confirmation on this that he's a bad guy or not. But there was definitely no need to have confirmation whether or not Zack Snyder was passionate about making these films to the best that he could do, as opposed to this idea that all these other weird videos that came out about Zack Snyder suggesting that he's basically an anti-fan. For if I may paraphrase it down to this most simplistic form, just to get you to understand where I'm coming from. They called to remove him from the franchise, so they did. People felt like he was bad business. Now, here's where the best argument you can have. You can look at the numbers and argue whether it was business or not to see that they were accurate or inaccurate in taking him off the film. If you want to just have a good enough argument against me, and I'll give you that. My point being is that everyone wants to augment Muschietti's film based on another person, and you won't get to see his film in its true form, just like you're trying to say that you couldn't see these two young actresses characters in a film that they probably wasn't going to get that much screen time with, because Ezra plays 3 different Flash characters. He takes up the lion's share of the film, and whether you like it or not, and maybe they do take up a lot more screen time than they should, but as it stands, it's called The Flash, and he's playing 3 different characters. I'm not expecting these girls to be in these these actresses to be in this film that significantly. It'll just be a setup to their storyline should they now be able to go forth and make films spinning off of it, which the Batgirl film will be spun off of in this universe, as we can only assume now because we have no real confirmation about this film. For all we know, in this universe, the reason why they didn't use the guy from that played the original played Ben Affleck's father is because he had scheduling conflict, from what I understood and from what I remember rumored reports were. And I believe Dean Cain, I think that's his name, not Dean Cain, but the guy that played the original Bruce Wayne's father, I forget his name right now. If I'm not mistaken, he said he was in the scheduling conflict. Scheduling conflicts with, if I'm not mistaken. But if I'm not mistaken, he was approached first about it before they went with Michael Keaton. And which can arguably say that this could still be the Flashpoint story where Michael Keaton may not be playing Bruce Wayne. He may be playing Bruce's father, Thomas Wayne. Again, we do not really know any confirmation about this, but we're pre-assuming that these girls, these actresses, in their work is being overshadowed because of what Ezra Miller did. And to be fair, or did not do, just the accusations alone. And to be fair, I get the argument, all the people behind the scenes, but then again, you could say the same for Andy Muschietti and all the people that had confidence in the film as it stands. And now their art must be tweaked just because we cannot separate the art from the artist. You can make that argument. To be fair, and this is what I'm talking about, where we fall into a situation where we're not consistent with our arguments and what we're complaining about or advocating for or against, and we have to be very careful with this. Now, how it affects the larger fandom would be, now, could you watch a film knowing that the person in it is an actual criminal? Or even is accused of any kind of debauchery that goes against your personal morale? To be fair, that is a question. But I would argue we've got let a lot of shit fly anyway. Look at Ghislaine Maxwell. No one talked about this. Now, to be fair, this is the movie fandom, so she wouldn't exactly come up. But again, I've noticed, just generally speaking, people don't discuss it as much as we just speak of the celebrities. So are we really serious about how we really feel about the act in and of itself, or the fact that we got a relationship of any intangibility in terms of the art? We love the art that they do, or the music that they do, and we love the music and what they do so much, or the idea of them so much, we're so romanticized about that now that we're already hooked, that if they are considered anything, we don't say anything. Cardi B was out there saying that she done drugged dudes before, and other things you could YouTube. No one talked about it. No one cared. Is it because she's a celebrity? And we could argue maybe because she's also a female. I mean, where's the consistency? We don't make that same argument with Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. I remember when Bryan Singer came out there with his accusations, very few people did not give it this much smoke. Maybe because he was accused against little boys. Again, the consistency. We know when to separate it and when to do and when not to do it. Is this a thing of stirring the pot for just views and clickbait as well? This is also might be also a hustle. Remember, YouTube is going to keep talking about whatever that is going to bring them the most traffic as well. I mean, there is a argument to be said that way as well. So how do I bring this all the way back around? Are we as YouTubers any better by continuing the conversation without having all the information at our lap? I don't know. I mean, I do feel like these accusations are strong enough that we should have the conversation. But I also, listening as a fly on the wall, I hear a lot of dangerous talk that makes it look very reminiscent of what we argued against when it came to Snyder. Not to say that Snyder's too much wrapped around this, but I see dangerous parallels. Augmenting the film based on what the fans want to call against, or what if does it go over with the fans? And then the question is which fans? Because clearly, listening at the stream, there was a little bit more pushback than I thought, but not as much as I've heard online. Like, people call them Ezra apologists or whatever, and it's like, well, can you call them apologists when we don't really have any information? He said absolutely nothing, and every incident that he's got caught up with, he's actually got arrested. He left on his own fruition. No one is really, there's no manhunt for him. And I do think that there's a lot of YouTubers clickbaiting it as such. And when you listen to them, they actually do kind of keep it funky and say, well, technically speaking, no one's chasing him. But when you look at how you write out your titles, how you present your thumbnails, you wouldn't reticently get that. You wouldn't be reticent to get that kind of opinion. And that's the point. We put up the salacious bait out there to bring people to come and listen to it, and to be fair, we're right, we could do that and tell that people don't read or listen, they just read the cover. They read the cover of the book and act like they could do a book report off of it. And it's like, no, read the book. You're missing a whole lot, and there's a whole lot of things that's more contextual than what you're expounding upon and extrapolating from based on just what you got paraphrased out the front of the book, because we can't give you the full information, nor do we want to spoil the whole book. So you're just building off of just fragments of itself, whereas if you read the whole book, you might not get that at the end of what you're saying had you read the book. Because no one's going to put all of that in the book. They want to put the twist. And the twist may be that, technically speaking, he's not on the run. Then you would be like, why the hell you got me looking at this video? Just so I can get you to look at this video and get my clicks up. And that's the point. And are we no different? We walk a very dangerous tightrope where we have to start to look ourselves in the mirror and be like, are we adding to the misinformation as well, just because we want to get people to the table to have the conversation that we want to have, even though we might feel he's guilty just because of the accusations alone and the quote-unquote volume of the people that's coming out. And again, it's easy to run with that, but you could always argue the way about how many lawsuits do actors really get that they pay out that we do not ever know about, because they just don't want it to be dragged out for public opinion. Because as we're proving, public opinion means law. At the end of everything that people are saying, there's not too much if it comes out he's this, we should do that. They're already saying drop him. Drop him. He's too hot and spicy. And again, I wouldn't even argue that against the business of it. It would make sense. Why would Zaslav want to continue dealing with this mess? It's a lot of collateral damage, but it's easy for us to believe that in our small, narrow community where people pay attention to this. The broader fan base, the fan base abroad, they're not privy or even geeking up about all of this for this to even hit their radar to begin with. Why WB will remain silent. It'll take discussions like that to make people want to be aware of it. But then what are we being aware of? Do we actually know that he's doing any of what he's accused of being done? I mean, I'm already hearing people already jumping to the narrative of because he was arrested with an airsoft gun, if I'm not mistaken, that it may well be in his nature that he will go the extra mile and shoot someone. Is that fair assessment? I don't know. Because the same person that made that accusation, from what I understand, he even talked about that they use a video against him out of context. But again, we can argue just the fact that you even use any part of what you was accused of, you could do an extreme down the line as well on a meltdown. Because now that you've been accused of it before in your past, we might have to consider that you might go off the deeper end, just like you accused him of. And again, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. I'm all for the conversation because it was interesting just to listen to how people had the conversation. But as I listened, it compelled me to make this video because I think certain points were lost in that video feed, which made me ask the question, can we divorce the actor from the film, from the talent? And again, I do believe there's a level of confirmation. I wouldn't say confirmation. That's not what you would call it. By inactivity, you're kind of allowing for it to happen, even though you technically don't necessarily need to be. You could just, at that point, if it's still an accusation, you could just be like, hey, I don't know, but this is what we're doing for right now until we find out what is absolutely accurate. Then if it's accurate, then you can make the final assessment. Now, if there's a trial of some sorts, and then you still got to argue. Now, if enough people feel a way about the outcome for or against it, do you not as a business drop it because now it's just having this actor, it would be too conflicting. And the actor at some point would have to know, but business-wise, I need to walk away. Because my name carries way too much shit with it, even though I might not have done anything. The fact that enough people feel that I am, or in their feelings, or are triggered by my name per se, would it behoove me now to remove myself from the film franchise, or to be removed? Would you be that surprised? You can't. It's business. And at the end of the day, you still want to maintain a healthy relationship with your consumer as a business person. You know what I mean? So, again, can we separate ourselves from that? And then the consistency of it. There's a film out there called Elvis, and I had to look it up just to be clear. Elvis, if I'm not mistaken, did not marry Priscilla when she was underage, but he was with her since she was 14. And people are talking Oscar nominations. People that really have an issue with this Ezra Miller thing, no one wants to talk about how they may have not addressed even that in the Elvis film. And even if they did, how come I don't hear no one talking about it? I mean, Scarlett Johansson has done a film with Woody Allen, the gentleman. Well, I can't even refer to him as a gentleman. This weird guy that is an acclaimed director, and he married his adopted daughter. This is weird. This dude adopted he married his adopted daughter, and people have still worked with him because he was this acclaimed artistic director. Scarlett Johansson has worked with him, and it's been on the record. And when she was asked about him, and let's say she defended him enough that she could at least support her reasoning for working with him. No one's talked about it. People went to see Black Widow. No one talked about it. Yet we could Google up every little itty bitty thing that we can find, any negative thing said about a person. We will do that. We could go find people's tweets and this, that, and cancel them. But no one had an issue with this. Why? Because we love the MCU, and no one wants to look at Scarlett Johansson like that. But we're not going to go and look this up and say, hey, we shouldn't mess with her because she supported a guy that married his stepdaughter. Let's be for real. Are we consistent in that matter? Are we being honest by separating these artists from their art? See, and this is where it can get real blurry. Because there's a lot of people out here that got some stories behind them. If you go do some Google searches on them, that made a lot of things just go away. And these are accusations, and some have been founded. And we don't shame them out of future projects. We do not taint and tarnish their name, and we do not let those accusations follow them throughout their careers. Because enough time has gone, I guess we've passed, so this new generation want to find their new generation of people that they could use for their personal witch hunt of the day. I don't know. But there's something to be said about the inconsistencies of us as a fandom and how we approach this Ezra Miller thing and how we approach every other thing that's been out there. And I hope we can just pay attention to that. I'm not mad at the conversation nor the stream. I think the stream needs to be had. I think the conversation needs to be brought up. But I do think that we're tiptoeing on some dangerous concepts by saying, hey, just implode the whole DCEU based on just this one guy. At the same time, I do understand if I was Zaslav, if I'm inheriting all this nonsense, and if this was really becoming more of a hassle, I would attribute Ezra being the last straw as opposed to being the straw that should make everything just go away. I think all the issues surrounding the universe of DC trying to bring a full-fledged DCEU, I do feel like if I was Zaslav, it would be, I could see him sometimes be like, you know what, I just want to start all over again with my own guys so I could stray away from this. But at the same time, you have a lot of contracts and stuff. I mean, you may lose out way more than you do by gaining anything by starting everything all over again as soon as you just acquired all these properties in the middle of still making money. There's still a lot of value to be had. And I think right now is cost risk assessment that Zaslav is still going and planning and plotting through. And at the same time, that should be understood why WB has maintained silence. Also, it's a new regime going through a lot of shift changes and things going on within it. No one's going to not make the motion to, what's the best way to put it? When you take over a new business, yeah, you're gonna be a lot of shifting around, a lot of consolidation, a lot of things of that nature. But also you wanna focus on least spending. But also you don't wanna lose out any type of gains you can get off of what's already in the pipeline and in progress and that's already in the can. You want to maximize the most you can get out of it. Now, if they was to wipe the whole slate clean, you lose out on a lot of things that's already in the pipeline that you could have made money off of. But I also understand starting all over again, you could give people brand new, fresh characters. But at the same time, you could F up the money as well, because now you have to start all over again, rebuilding everything from scratch, which will be easier for a narrative. But would it be easy to get an audience now that you're starting all over again and you've never even completed a full arc or a story and seen it to its completion? I mean, you may alienate your audience as well. I mean, you got to understand, that's why no one's saying anything. And it makes sense not to say anything because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if any more information will come out, and things can tip it one way or the other. And if you're in the middle of trying to grab a hold of and salvage a company that can be so profitable, but this is one of their major issues, at least when it comes to one corner of what they purchased, that is very vital to the brand as well, because it's like the comic book franchise is a big brand, merchandising, all of these other things go into it. You got to figure out what's the best move to make, especially if test audiences are accurate that it is an actually good film. It's a conundrum that's not easy to get to the end of. And I think that a lot of people speak in a finite manner about what should happen, and that's cool. Everybody has their opinions and have their right to them. But I do believe that listening in on that conversation open up the doors for a lot more talk that we have to pay attention to as we talk the way we talk. Like I listened and pay attention to in that conversation from people from all sides of the conversation. And I'm curious to know what you guys think. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Leave it in the comments below, because this was kind of a long one. I wanted to draw upon a lot of different type of point of views and perspectives that I felt that I kind of noticed that I felt like we have to be very careful and to not go down certain roads. And also, I didn't think that no one noticed that they're walking dangerously down the line of validating taking Zack Snyder away from the DCEU and validating why. And you can't get mad if they decide to do that again and not restore the Snyderverse based on how we're responding just to this situation so easily and so smoothly without any real, I don't want to say no evidence, because we do got some video of this dude acting a fool, and Ezra is a weird motherfucker, but just because you're weird don't make you a criminal either. And no one knows. It's just rumors and stories, and some quite disturbing ones, and that no one wants to associate with a kid-friendly franchise that at the same time is still understood why people would just say, hey, just the accusation alone in this direction, drop him like he did it. Treat him like he did it. Because clearly no one likes these guys, and this is also the reason why people are very careful not to just label them just the same as well. It's something on both sides to be understood, and there's also different areas of the Snyderverse trying to make their arguments through this incident, just as the anti-Snyderverse fans are trying to use this incident to make their arguments. There's a lot of using this as a vehicle to get championing their side of the fandom when it comes to Snyderverse as well. Someone actually even brought it up in there, which was also something I was glad someone actually brought up, because like I tell people, a lot of these stuff, the arguments within the fandom are really cloaked in political arguments that we're using as YouTubers, using as veneers. You know what I'm saying? Or rather, we're using the films as veneers for our political affiliations, that in which we would find it easiest to argue our narratives and political perspectives. And there's a little bit of that going on within it that I'm kind of noticing. So, but in any event, this one's long enough, but let me know what you guys think about in the comments below. Am I onto something? Is this something that we should have more discussions about? Even all the things that I brought up now, has it made you approach this idea differently? Leave it in the comments below. Or is it making you think anymore? Leave that in the comments below. And you already know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time. And as always, I have a good outro. Chill.